Welcome to the Cyber Business Podcast, where we feature top founders and entrepreneurs and share their inspiring stories. Now, let's get started with the show.
Matthew Connor here, host of the Cyber Business Podcast. Today, we're joined by Shawn Hamm, who's currently transitioning from Director of Cybersecurity to CIO. Shawn, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Matt. Thank you for having me. Before we get started, thank you for your service.
Oh, hey, my pleasure. You caught me off guard by that one. My pleasure. Well, and before we get too far in, a quick word from our sponsors. Hackers are getting smarter. Is your security keeping up? CyberLink sells industry-leading AI-powered cybersecurity solutions that detect threats in real time, so you know about an attack before the damage is done, not after. Learn more at cyberlinks.com. That's cyberlynx.com. And now back to our show. Shawn, so let's talk about transitioning from Director of Cybersecurity to CIO.
It was just kind of the next evolution was to move to the next higher chair. So, the opportunity presented itself. It's a smaller company that I've transitioned to, but, moving up and being, the responsible person and having the authority to do the job, we're both big sellers to take it. So, I decided to make the move.
I love it. I mean, and I think for a lot of people, sometimes that transition over from the security side over to, to CIO, where you may be kind of responsible for you are responsible for the security and the IT side, I think can be a little intimidating for people, especially if they're really comfortable on the security side. And, there's a lot going on both sides of the aisle there, on the security side and on the IT side. There's just a lot. And especially in today's day and age, where there's also AI that now comes into both sides, and now everything is going super fast. I think that's irrefutable. We are developing and growing, and things are changing at a faster pace than they ever have. So let me ask you, how do you propose people try to keep up with the pace of the development thanks to AI?
I think from the get, you got to have a solid foundation. If you're not understanding the basics, you shouldn't try to do the more advanced stuff. The most corporations have, Microsoft Tenant, the Copilot's built in, it's fairly secure, but you really got to go do your due diligence. Make sure everything is set and configured the way to most safely operate those things inside the environment. Don't give your regular workers, the global admin access to their Copilot account. Probably not a good plan from the start. And make sure that everybody at the company starts to take the training. If you're a Microsoft partner, they have Microsoft training. It's free. It's available. Just kind of build a little profile for yourself. Take it nights and weekends. Or like me, the last couple of weeks, I've deployed OpenClaw at home just to kind of have something to play with. I've learned a lot. I've crashed it. I've killed it. I've overloaded it. I started out on a small HP ProDesk, a little mini computer. I migrated it into a giant beast that I built out. It's got a top of the line i9, 128 gigs RAM, 4 terabyte Samsung 990 Pro, and a GTX 5090 card. So it's got some beef.
Wow.
But once I opened it up, it kind of got away from me once. I'd asked it to review a document on my internal NAS drive, and then I worked through that one project or that one task, and then I wandered away. Eventually went to bed. Woke up in the morning and discovered that it had indexed every file on every computer in the house in anticipation of me wanting it to ask it something else. So it kind of got out of the box a little. So I learned about how to, better set the rules. And, like I said, I don't see it as a fail. I see it as a learning experience. And with any new tool, or, some people call it a toy, it's, you've got to go through the processes of failures. I absolutely recommend, watching YouTubes, talking to others that are doing something. I've looked around the corporate environment at our side, and I was surprised. I looked through who has Copilot licenses, and I talked to each one who's actually using Copilot in any real sense. Have you built an agent? Do you know what an agent is? And I got varied responses. One person, I don't know what an agent is. I just ask it questions and it helps me with email. So they're getting kind of the basics, and then I, explain what an agent is and went from there. And then another person I talked to, I thought was, I'm going to make this phone call. This guy, there's no way he's tech friendly. He's a little bit older gentleman. He's going to be at this email level, right? And I get on the phone with him. He's like, no, check it out. And he shares the screen. He's like, I've got 32 agents right now, and they're all built doing all different kinds of things. They go get this and do this. And he's like, the 3/4 of my day used to be, touching things and moving things around where it was all repetitive. He says, I've built these agents to figure this all out and do it for me. I show up in the morning at 6 a.m. There's a PDF in my inbox that shows everything like in dashboard format that I need to know information to start my day. And he says, like every hour I get updates from the systems. Agents talk to me constantly. They're always asking questions. I'm like, oh my God, yeah, I really did. You were going to be the email guy, you were going to be the ask a dumb questions guy. And he's like, no, I've been using this pretty hardcore for like a year now. He said he admitted, he says it was really hard kind of getting started. He says, but, I had asked the IT guy that was here before, and he pointed me to these Microsoft package classes that come with the tenant. He says, I just went in, I clicked beginner, everything that it showed that was available, course after course after course, I audited and I practiced and I played with it, and I had IT give me more permissions to do more things. Then when I was all done and comfortable, I went back and I hit intermediate and I went through all of those classes. And then I hit expert, and he says, I just hit the developer one, which is the highest level of courses to go through. And he says, I just finished my first one. He says, now the developer ones versus the expert is way above where I am. He says, so I think this part of it is going to be kind of, where I'm tapped out. He says, it's really starting to be more of a thing that I'm going to struggle with. He says, but I'm going to audit every class. And if I have to do them 2 or 3 times, I'll go through it and I'm going to learn it. He says, because I'm going to be the go-to guy for AI here.
That's awesome.
And I was pleasantly surprised. And now that I've started making the phone calls and asking the questions, other people have found out, and now I'm being asked to put together an AI council and at least once a month call about AI discussion. So my thought process for that, or plan for that, is to engage with everybody that's using AI in the company and have every month that somebody else showcase an agent that they've developed or something cool that they're doing with the team. Things that may resonate with others or that could be utilized by others. Nobody internally even knew that you could build an agent to do something, clone it, and give it to somebody else. You can move them around. So if somebody comes up with something cool that does something in a way that functions well for us, we can replicate that out. We can push it out to other users. Especially look towards, like the sales guys or some of the field guys, as they, a lot of those jobs and tasks, the repetitive tasks are all the same. So being able to do that, they didn't even know it was possible. That I'm telling them that, hey, I'm still learning this myself. I would call myself a beginner. Now I've got 3 decades of IT experience. Maybe I've got an edge, but I'm still new.
Yeah.
The AI thing, I had been kind of holding off for a while. Every new technology that comes out, there's always this big hype curve, and then it always falls off a cliff and crashes. I see AI, getting kicked down a couple of notches. Maybe coming soon, but it's here to stay. I have no doubt of that.
Yeah.
And then there's some of the other talk that I hear is around jobs. Hey, AI is going to take all of these jobs. And a friend of mine actually was talking to about this yesterday, and he made a pretty good point. If you look back at the late 1800s, early 1900s, everybody got around on horse and carriage. If you went, on your horse into New York City, the horse did its business as it walked along, and there were street sweepers, there were cart guys with shovels and cleaning that up. And then automobiles came out, and they're like, that's not going to be any big deal because they're one here, one there. It's nothing, right? And then 1915 comes along, and Ford is able to build thousands of cars a day, mass production. Now by 1920, those jobs are all gone.
Yeah.
But if you look at the jobs that we have now in just the automotive industry, not even the road industry, just cars, there's hundreds and hundreds of jobs where we did away with 5 or 6, menial labor jobs. There are literally hundreds of different jobs, engineers, designers, airflow experts that see how the air goes over the car, and, materials experts. So for somebody to come and say, oh, AI is going to take away all these jobs, it's like, you can't contemplate in your mind what jobs are going to be next.
Yeah.
What cool thing is coming down the line that we don't even understand is going to be the next best thing, or the next set of jobs that are out there. It's just, I think it's an exciting time to be alive. And I think, granted, I'm closer probably to the tail end of my career than the beginning. But to see these things come up and come along, and then with the quantum computing is coming soon. I think we're maybe 5 to 7 years out on that before we get, a viable solution. They've got to hit that 1 billion or 1 million qubit mark or something like that for it to be commercially viable at a price point. But I think once they marry AI and quantum computing, I think we're going to solve some real problems.
Oh yeah, for sure. And the fun part is they're already starting to do that, on these smaller levels. So we're already seeing amazing things there. So it'll be fun to see what comes out of those labs, and as the technology increases, to see what happens. So yeah, that is exciting. But I think you're right, and I think you brought up some really good points that while the future is kind of unknown in terms of what new jobs will be there, for the foreseeable future, I think people, it's pretty clear that it's going to generate a whole lot more jobs than it will get rid of. Of course, it's going to get rid of some jobs. Every new technology gets rid of jobs, right? I mean, the telephone, we no longer have telephone operators, and who would want
Right.
that job now? It doesn't even make sense now. But we have so many more jobs. The economy grows, everything improves, people's quality of lives, the amount of wealth that we generate because of this technology. It's all moving up. The reality is we just can't quite see what that looks like. And for a lot of people, that's scary. But if you look at history and you look at what has happened every single time, the technology just makes life better. So life will be better. How exactly? Who knows? But I think certainly will be better until our AI overlords kill us all. But until then, we're going to be doing great. But now I want to kind of go back to your Claude bot, because I think that's really interesting, and the whole Microsoft, because it was, just to piece those things together, that like I was doing it's a Microsoft AI agent, right?
Right.
Yeah. And so I think that's really cool, because that's one you don't hear a lot about. We hear about the cloud bots. We hear about um, you know, we hear about, you name it, all kinds of other bots. Perplexity's got theirs, Anthropic's got Cowork. So really cool stuff happening there in the more controlled space. And then CloudBot is out there with no controls on the bleeding edge. But then you get the lesser known Microsoft AI agent. I don't think a lot of people are aware of it. I think it's an unsung hero in the Microsoft, world. And why do you think that is? And how would you encourage people to explore more about it?
So, and again, maybe some of this is opinion, some of this is fact. The Microsoft Copilot environment comes with the Microsoft tenant. It's already there. It's built into it. It's built onto their desktops, desktops, laptops. You get anything with Windows on it, it's got the Copilot built in. So the Copilot environment was designed from the ground up to keep your data yours in your tenant. Now, that doesn't mean that, if you do something wrong, your janitor is able to read your financial reports. Probably not the greatest, idea. But nobody outside of my environment is going to read those financial reports, because they're not going to get out on the Claude or the ChatGPT. If you upload those documents to there, they take those documents, they learn, and anybody that understands data mining can go and find whatever information is out there about whatever company that's had the unfortunate, circumstance of uploading those documents. Copilot is built to keep your corporation's documents yours. Now the downside is there's not really a lot of learning opportunities at the personal level for younger people coming up to learn Copilot, because it's significantly expensive. You got to spin up a tenant. You're paying $300 or $400 a year for a license, and then you pay for the tokens, the usage fees. It gets pretty expensive for, I'd say, a student. If it was me making a recommendation to Microsoft, and who am I to tell them what to do? They're the 900-pound gorilla. It would be find a way to allow your product to have a free or near free version. The Claude bot with all the other ones you're using tokens, they're costing $20 a month or 40. You can keep it inexpensive, but there's not a free version that the kids can play with, kind of thing. That even the seasoned professionals, like myself, there's not a free version I can go learn on. I have no choice but to open up my tenant and play with my Copilot in a live environment. Now I can leave the agents off and just run tests, and there's a way to kind of build up to it to make sure you're not doing anything that's dumb. But you need to understand how all that stuff works as you're building those things out. Having a free one to play with, I think, would be a much better or a controlled environment that I could, me personally, I could learn from. Now OpenClaw, I've deployed that on one computer. I've migrated it. I've crashed it. I've killed it. I've completely destroyed it multiple times. But they are, like I said before, it's every one of those times is the learning experience. I learned something new, and I won't do that thing again, or I understand more how it functions, how it wants me to communicate with it.
Yeah.
A lot of people say, "Oh, this agentic AI, just talk to it in plain language, and it does the thing." Well, yeah, but so did the genie in the lamp, right? You rub the lamp, you say, "I want to be rich." Okay, the genie runs off, robs a bank, and brings you the money back. Now the feds are out front of your house, guns drawn, and they're waiting to get you.
Yep.
You weren't specific.
Yep.
You
Great
need to
example.
really be specific with your ask,
That's right.
and that's kind of how you build controls. With the Copilot, one of the first things I took a look at was, hey, we've got all of these policy manuals and these policies. So I put them all in a single location on our SharePoint, and I told the Copilot, master engine, hey, review these policies and behave within these parameters as any actions that you're going to take. So it reviewed all of them. And, is it actually going to do it? I think that remains to be seen, because, I'm still kind of new in my messing with it. But, I think I've found a way for my team to, utilize the tool in a more safe environment. Is it set up the safest? No, it's not. Is it going to be? Sure. We'll continue to work at it and, make it ours. Make it work for our company. Now I think every company is going to have different experiences. Our finance department is not exactly the same as the next company or the next company. So their utilization of the tools is going to be a little bit different. Our sales is different. It's like the tech stack at any major company. They go out and they say, hey, we want to hire a CIO. Here's the list of the 40 technologies that we have. We want an expert in all of these things. That person doesn't exist. That company's tech stack is unique, like a fingerprint to that to that company. You'll find a guy that's half of those things, and he's got a general understanding of the rest. So that's kind of where you got to do your hiring. So it's kind of like what do you do? Do we really want to go for this AI person, or do we want somebody with cyber background, or do we want somebody with more management experience, less tech experience? It's like just find a guy that you can get along with, that speaks well, that can have a conversation. Maybe don't look at how technical they really are.
Well, I think that's what we're seeing now, is the emphasis on and priority on those human skills, the soft skills, right? Where it's how well do they integrate into the corporate culture, into the team? Are they somebody that you'd want to go and have a drink with, have a meal with? Will they work as a good member to this team? And I think we're seeing. I think AI helps bring that to the forefront and makes that more important. And I'll give you an example that I don't think you'd normally think about, in this context. But you look at Microsoft when they first implemented Copilot, they after 90 days, they looked internally. This is when they did it internally. They analyzed the data. They were expecting about 85% of their users to be power users, because it's Microsoft and they're kind of tech savvy, and they figured that would be how it works. Turns out only about 15% of the people were still using it after, at the 90-day point. 85% of the people thereabouts had stopped using it after a few weeks. And they're like, what? How's this make sense? And it turns out that the people who continue to use it, instead of them saying, hey, rewrite this email and giving them, like using them as a tool, they treated them as an employee, like a really kind of an intern. I get that you don't know anything about what we're doing, so I'm going to spell it out for you. And it basically, those people who are leading that and treating it like a new member to the team could speak, you could tell them, educate them about the job, educate them about the task, be very clear about what the task is. And then the AI agent, just like a normal person, got better and better and better and became a more valuable asset of the team. And so what they found was it wasn't about tech skills, but it was about people skills, which you wouldn't think. But for an AI, it really is having those people, those leadership skills, even if you're just leading one person, the managerial skills to realize that this person is new and doesn't know anything, versus somebody looking at it from a tech point of view of being like, well, you're super smart, so rewrite this. You're smart. Why didn't you figure it out? Like, well, I don't know your company and I don't know what you want. And I'm the genie and you said, make me rich. Here you go. Right. So I think that was a great example. And I think that's what we're going to see in the future is people skills being far more valuable. And I think we see it right now, even with the use of AI.
Yeah, I think a lot of people think, okay, right now we've got the corporate structure. You've got the CEO, the C-suite, VPs, the directors, so on, everybody down below. And now a lot of people are thinking, oh, this AI is going to come and it's just going to be a CEO and a whole bunch of bots. It's not going to work that way. It's never going to work that way. I think the kind of the ultimate where we're going to end up at is you're going to have a CEO, some executives. Each of the executives are going to have some bots around them, and then they'll move down to the next level. You'll still have the the VPs and the directors, and they'll all have bots working around them. Maybe half a dozen or a dozen bots. And I think given your point, if you treat them, I think you're exactly right, just the way that you put it. If you treat them like an intern when you first get them, like a new hire intern, I think you're going to have much better results. That actually makes a lot of sense to me.
Yeah.
I really hadn't. You're right. I hadn't put it together that way, but I was kind of thinking along those lines.
Yeah.
I was, it's like treat it like a child. Hey, I'm trying to teach my 5-year-old this, and kind of get through it, and it learns and learns. But you're right. Intern is probably the appropriate label.
Yeah, because you can't think of it like a child because this AI in many regards it's super intelligent. So now you're treating it like a genius 5-year-old. Like that doesn't make sense either.
Yeah.
But it's an intern, maybe wicked smart, know, all kinds of stuff. And they likely are. They're young, they're energetic, they're educated, they're excited and ready to they're aiming to please. And so you treat them like an intern. I think that's really, kind of where we're at. And I I think it's interesting, but I think we're going to see the CEO and everybody else with lots of bots doing things. And I'll tell you why, because I think that it was Jeff Bezos was saying that in a day, you maybe make one or two important decisions, right? And I think that's true of anybody at any level. You maybe even Jeff Bezos, at any level in the organization, you maybe make one or two important decisions a day, maybe. And so the important thing is to have all those tasks that keep everybody very busy and active done, so that when it comes time to make those decisions, you're making a good decision versus you're already spent from decision fatigue from doing all the little menial laborious things. AI's done that, so now you're clear, you're relaxed. And it's interesting because um, I found myself recently being so I guess kind of wound up from technology going so fast. AI is going fast, jobs going fast, everything is going really fast. And even when you're taking a break, you might step away and be like, oh, okay, I'm gonna step away from my work. And then people get on their phone and they flip through and they're watching Instagram or doing whatever on their phone, thinking that they're getting a break, but you're not. You're now, it's kind of like we're overstimulating our minds all the time. If you rewind, you and I are old enough to rewind to the days when you just sit around bored, waiting for your parent to pick you up or waiting for something. You're like, I gotta wait
Absolutely.
here for 30 minutes. What am I gonna do? You twiddle your thumbs, you think you're actually freaking bored, which turns out is actually good for the human mind. And so I found
You can't
myself,
even ping mom to see where she is. When are you going to be here?
yeah,
Yeah, we
now
didn't
you
have
ping
anything.
mom, you text her, you email, you call, and like everybody's instantly available.
Yep. If you were
But
supposed to be picked up at 4 and it's 4:20, you better still stay where you're supposed to be picked up at until she
100%,
shows.
because otherwise you're going to be there for a lot longer till she comes back at 9, but like, well, you weren't here when I got here. Right. And so I think we're going into an age where the what you have to do is actively unplug and focus on the human elements of us and let technology do what technology does best and let humans do what we do best, which isn't try to compete on productivity and output because computers do that better. AI does that better. We can't compete there. Ours is the creative, ours is the human interaction. Nobody's going to want to interact with the AI robot. Yeah, it'll be cool, but that's not who you want to go and talk to. And I get it. We have some weird people who are falling in love with their AI agents already and their bots. And it's like, yeah, you probably need to talk to a real human and get that head
There's
shrunk a
websites
little
for
bit.
that already.
There really are. And it's so sad, right? But I think we're going to this place. And what I found with me was the second I stopped doing that and I started taking real breaks and trying to get myself bored, my memory was getting better. My mind was getting sharper. I mean, I literally went to the doctor and was like, I think maybe my hormones are out of whack. Like maybe, maybe it's like I'm getting older. Maybe it's lower testosterone. I need to like boost it up. Drew the blood work. I was fine. I was actually on the high level of everything, like on the higher end of normal. So it wasn't like there was nothing wrong there. And I pieced it together. It was like, that's, I think, what's happening. So I took the break. Everything's coming back. And it's just, I think that's where we need to be with humans is like use that AI that way and focus on the humans and unplugging and slowing down because we can't keep up with that stuff.
It can't be go watch TV for a couple hours. It can't be go on the phone. Like
No.
me, my solution, I bought a jet ski.
Nice.
I go out on the water near me, and I go for hours. I'll get out there, with my daughter or daughters at 6 o'clock in the morning, and just go, and we will be gone. You can't drive a jet ski and scroll. Oh, that doesn't
You
work.
can, but I wouldn't recommend it. You're going to lose that
Nope,
phone.
you're coming back with no phone, uh, and you're going to be mad the whole trip because you're going to lose it early.
Yeah, that's right.
But yeah, I've taken up long distance jet ski riding. I've done the trip to the Bahamas a few times. I love going to the beach with my family, and it's I just tell work it says, I'm out. I'm going someplace where there's just no service, and I'll be gone for 7 days.
Yep.
I did it last Christmas. We did Jamaica. I took the family to
Nice.
Jamaica, and it was
So
give
cool.
me everybody, give me your electronic devices. I put them in a safe, and they stayed in there for the first 4 days.
I love that.
No electronics, no
You know what we
TV.
did?
I unplugged it from the wall. We are going to go outside and we're going to enjoy nature or whatever. Sit at the pool, go to the beach, go to the restaurant, eat. I don't care, but you are not looking at a phone. You're not looking at a tablet. I don't want to hear about movies at night. You're going to go wear yourself out during the day and sleep good at night. And we're going to do it again tomorrow.
Yep. And everybody loves it. It's
Yeah,
funny. During COVID, we decided that the kids were getting older and yeah, we were nobody remembers what if they celebrate Christmas. Nobody remembers 90% of the Christmas presents they got the year before, right?
right.
And so we spend all this money on presents that people forget and they don't mean anything, right? So what we decided to do was instead we were going to take a family trip. So we made this kind of pledge, no matter where we were, as the girls grew up and moved out into the world, no matter where they were, where we were in life, every year or over Christmas we would take at least a week off. And we would go on a family trip. And so instead, no exchanging presents. That was our present to each other. Was we go and we're there present with each other, having a nice time for that time. Kind of, and it's been the most spectacular thing ever. I mean, it just the rejuvenation, the time together, the quality, the everything. It's so much better. And it doesn't have to be a crazy trip either. Just the fact that you're unplugging together with your families so much more valuable than the presents.
I think I learned more about my kids in the week in Jamaica than I learned about them in the year prior. And I know they're smart. I know that they're intelligent. But these two little humans are just, they're amazing.
Yeah.
But I come home, I put my stuff down, or they come in the house, they're in sports, and if they're not doing something out, they're on a device with their friends, or, walking around with the tablet, watching Netflix. It's just, I talk to them. My wife talks to them. We talk to each other, but you're not really having a conversation. Everybody's kind of passing each other in the house, staring at their devices. Not literally, but pretty much.
Yeah.
And you're right. Having that time where I just took everybody's device away. Mine, my wife's. Hey, work's not calling nobody. Put them in a safe. Nobody's going to touch them. And the amount of communication and the amount of things that we learned about each other in just that brief period of time was amazing. And we've decided then, it's like, we're going to do these we're going to try to do a vacation every Christmas from now on. And if we can't do a big one, then we'll do a small one. We'll go someplace local or stay in the U.S. If the costs need to be lower that year, then we do something smaller. Whether it's a campground or something. There are a lot of winter campgrounds you can go to in the South.
Yep.
I like the beach. I love the beach. So, dad's paying, dad's picking, right?
Yep. Yeah. It's not so hard. It's funny. We've had a few uh women CIOs on the podcast, and one of my favorite topics is women in IT, because it is a challenging um it's a challenge for women, because it's been predominantly so male dominated for so long. And I want to take the time to kind of discuss this with you, because what we haven't done is had two guys on the podcast talking about this very important issue. Now, being the father of both of us being fathers of girls getting into the IT field, I think it hits close to home for us, and gives us a helps expedite our view into these matters. And I'd like for us to take some time to really talk about some of these issues, and what guys can do to help start seeing our role in making this a better environment for everybody in IT. So I know that's broad, but let me kick it off with that. What are some of the let me Yeah, go ahead. You seem to already have some ideas.
Um, you know, look in your own environment. Like you mentioned, you and I have daughters. Talk to them, right? Teach them about technology. That's how I spent time with my daughters when they were little. I was when my oldest was born, I was in a consulting role. I did a lot of custom builds for people as kind of my side hustle. I would sit her on the bench next to me. Dad's building the PC. Keep an eye out, watch, and then eventually I would bring home the bag of parts, and then she would build the PC. And then as they kind of wander out into the world, they develop friends. The girls would come over. My house is constantly filled with little girls. And I'd talk to them about it. Hey, what do you think about this? What do you think about that? Just try to get them excited about something, or showcase something interesting that I'm working on, to see if I can spark the interest. And then that's family. And I've got a lot of nieces and nephews, obviously, come from a pretty big family. My wife's one of six. I'm one of four. If we move up to great grandma, she was one of 20. So it's a big family, and I make myself available to anybody that wants to talk tech anytime they've got questions. And then the younger ones, I actually specifically target all my nieces. Hey, what are your thoughts? What do you want to go into? And kind of where are you going? I try to see if maybe tech is an option for them. And then that's on the personal level. On the corporate side, I've been in a position to do hiring for probably the last 15, 16 years, something like that. I would almost always hire a female over male every single time. And I'll tell you what, I've hired males, and I thought they were good hires. It's nobody's going to hire perfect. There's just no such thing exists. But I've always had better luck hiring female employees than I ever have hiring male employees. I mean, as far as them working out, I think their approach to things are just kind of like what you said. There's not a lot of people that look like me in this industry. I'm going to try that little bit extra, or I'm going to find that extra edge that maybe some guy doesn't have. I'm going to razor sharp my skills. I'm going to constantly upskill.
Well,
Or-
you know what, I'm gonna push back a little bit here because I think part of the problem is that the system has created it to where women have to be perfect, and a guy can be average, and 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 in order for the woman to be seen as an equal, she's got to be so much better,
oh,
right?
absolutely.
And and
There's no you get no argument from me that that's how the industry
Totally.
treats them.
And so I think the perspective instead for guys hiring, it needs to be here's a fun perspective. If you're only seeing the world with half of, with like one eye closed, if you're only seeing half of the picture, you're not making great decisions about where to go. Like you're just not, because you're only seeing half of the field of view. The female perspective gives us the full view, because no person, it's very clear, it's very obvious that no one human being even perceives the world accurately. We just don't. We filter it through our own filters, and that's just the reality of it. And so by having the female perspective on the team, like if you have those equal parts, you're seeing more of the picture. On top of the fact that when it comes to creative problem solving and all these other, and creativity in general, and how you can handle these, personnel issues, how you can, all kinds of things, to only be seeing it from the male perspective greatly hinders us. It's like fighting with one arm tied behind our back. Why would we do it? Like, to me, that's, I think, the thing that people, guys like us need to be looking at and saying, you know what? I'm only fighting with one arm, because I don't have that other. I'm only seeing half the picture, so I'm not making great decisions. What do you think?
I think you're right. And if you look at lots of other male dominated industries, construction or road crews, you know deep sea fishing, whatever it is, where it's pretty much all guys, oil rig workers. Maybe the argument could be made there's a strength issue. You don't. What does it take to lift a keyboard?
100%.
And then you're right. The capacity to learn, the capacity to do the job it's all in the brain. If they're capable, they should be afforded the opportunity. I 100% agree. I wish that there were more opportunities for women to go into tech, and I think sometimes it's like my older daughter she's really into gaming. But we've taken painstaking efforts to create an online persona that does not say whether she's male or female, because of how the gaming industry treats females. And that's usually most tech people's foray into going into tech is they
Okay.
start out as a gamer. Hey, this group of guys, they're just bullying me as soon as they found out I was a girl.
Yep.
So they get turned off.
Yep.
I know now it's not so bad. There are a lot of esports stuff around girls, and there are a lot of engineering things that are around girls, that to try to showcase and bring the females into the tech industry. And I would say now I'm seeing, as I go through the interview process or the resume process, I'm seeing more females apply for more openings that I'm posting over the years, and I think it's a good thing. Are we anywhere where we need to be or where I think we should be? Not even close. Are we headed in the right direction? Up is the direction, right? But it's not going anywhere near as fast as I think it should. I think if anybody is capable, they should be afforded the opportunity. Male, female, I don't care if you're green, orange, if a frog could figure it out, I'd hire him to do it.
What
But it's you're right. If they're capable, should be given the opportunity to do it, and the opportunity to learn to do it better.
I mean, personally, I think there's something to what you're saying about gaming, and first of all, I think that is a place because you can have some anonymity. I don't think that's a good thing at all on the internet. I don't think anything ever good has ever come from anonymity, other than there needs to be, for countries where they have uprisings, or where there's these totalitarian regimes in charge, there needs to be a dark web for people to be able to communicate without the government oversight. Got it. I agree with that. I don't agree that on the web itself, that anonymity has ever been a benefit. Anytime you it creates this mob mentality where the worst of the worst comes out. And so in gaming, you see this where these guys get to act in the worst possible way and say the worst possible things, and with for them just for fun and with no repercussions. But the recipient of that, no matter what, is having to deal with that. When it's other a-hole guys, it's not a big deal. But there is this huge push when it's guys against girls, and the misogyny comes out. The guys, I think, thinking nothing of it, the girls taking the brunt of it and having to deal with it. And it is, as you said, off-putting. But I think this, so if we were to get rid of that anonymity, I'm looking forward to that day. I don't think and people can argue about, but then, the government or somebody or and their privacy, it's public. There should be no expectation of privacy in public. You want to be private? Do it in your house alone. Then you get to be
That's
private. But once you're
I
out in
don't
public,
disagree, and I think the gaming industry, the gaming manufacturers could force that issue. Hey, you
Mhm.
want to play on our platform? We want, name, address, who you are. We want
No,
an
little
ability
government
to
ID,
contact you.
boom. Yep,
Yeah,
we know who you are, and now you say some horrible, racist, sexist stuff. Guess what? That's public knowledge now. Now your employer knows about it. How
right.
good's that for you, Jimmy? Oh, Jimmy's not going to talk. He's not going to say crap anymore. I'm talking about you, Jim. No, I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know this Jimmy kid, but I think it's a really good, thing, because now you take those and you take that away from people. But I think it goes deeper because culturally we have this thing where we're early on we're incentivizing boys to be aggressive and fight and compete, and when we're not doing the same for girls. And I think that we have to start in the early stages as parents to be, yes, encourage them to be aggressive in competition. And we need to encourage that for that to be positively received. I mean, that's just good sportsmanship. When a girl goes out there and she kicks your butt on the field, that's great. Then you shouldn't be like, oh, you beat me, and be a baby about it. You should be, just like you would if you got beat by anybody else, right? And
Go
I
train
think that
harder.
who try hard to do better. Like, you don't want to lose. That's the whole point. Nobody wants
Right.
to lose, so do better. And I think that's where sports and esports can come in. It's the sportsmanship still needs to be there, and we need to enforce that on really young boys early on. You're right. And we need to encourage our young girls to be aggressive and be just as competitive, because they are and they can be. And when you handicap them for 10, 15, 20 years and then say, put them into the workforce where they have to compete. Now they get weird things where, like, they're not allowed to be aggressive. It's not seen the same way. It's received poorly. Well, that's bullshit, right? Like, right? I mean, that's
Every other sport on the planet has enforcement mechanisms for following the rules and good sportsmanship. Pick a major sport anywhere on the planet, soccer or football all over the world. The U.S. football, basketball, baseball, they all have enforcement mechanisms. These pro sports guys mess up, it's public because everybody knows your face. It's like, hey, that guy was fighting dogs last week. He got arrested by the police.
right.
He's out of a job.
That's
You're
right.
not playing football anymore.
Nope.
Or whatever goofy thing that some of these pro sports guys get into. It's like they get a little bit ahead of themselves. Sometimes they get slapped back, and sometimes they're just tossed. And there's no enforcement mechanism of any kind in esports. It is just like you said. It's an anonymous free for all in the background, and the keyboard warrior gets on. Little Jimmy, gets out way over his britches, because full well 99+% of the time, there is no way he would stand in front of a girl and behave that way.
No. And then it creates this sort of, you know, it creates this environment where they lack the respect, and they lack the interpersonal skills to actually treat their girls that are their peers with respect, and to treat them like their peers. And I think that's part of this cultural shift we need to start making with young kids early on. Is I really do think that we need to be as parents, as fathers, we need to be raising our sons the right way. I don't think this is on how we can get girls to do, be better. They're already phenomenal as a general rule, right? We need to raise the standards on our and on the young men in our country, and have them, doing that heavy lifting. And it's not even heavy lifting. Let's be honest. It's just about being fair, right?
Yeah,
And seeing things right. So I don't know. You see things like Girls Who Code. Are you familiar with this?
I am. My older daughter has been in that program a couple times.
It's phenomenal.
There's a local community college in our area that has a summer program. She's been to it twice.
Yeah.
When she was 14, she inadvertently had received an invite to the Google camp. We called up to get her enrolled because we were super excited that she had earned this opportunity. And they're like, yeah, we didn't notice she was 14. You got to be 16 to come. I mean,
Nice.
she was
That's
just
pretty
devastated.
stoked.
She
Yeah,
was
but
devastated.
you got to be pretty stoked about that though. I
Yeah,
mean,
she got the letter. It came in the mail. It had her name on it. One of the teachers at school for their computer program had submitted her name for it and some work that she had done on a project to see if she could get it. And they just they sent a letter to the house and it had her name on it. She was, I think it was the first piece of mail that she ever actually received with her name on
name
the
on it,
envelope.
yeah.
And because we're trying to be good parents, like hey, this letter came for her. It's
Yeah, you got to
here you
open it.
go,
Yeah, here you go.
open it up. And we didn't know it was coming. She
Yeah.
opened it up and she read it and was like, okay, now I'm interested. Why did you get a letter from Google? And she's like, I've been invited to this coding summer camp thing, and this and she's like can't speak, and she hands me the letter and I read through it and I'm like, look, there's a number on here. Let's call this guy right away. And
Yeah.
we reached out and, started going through he gives us all the process information, go to this website, log everything in, and we go in and we put a birthday in and it kicks back. And so I call the number back and they're like, oh yeah, we didn't see that when we sent out the invite. She got to be 16 for insurance. I was like, what if I show up and, stand behind her for the the program length. I'll make the
Sure.
time to go. Her mother's a teacher, so she's off all summer anyway. I mean, we can make
Yeah.
this work. And they're like, well, it's a liability thing. Insurance won't let us. And if you really want to push it, I can run it past the lawyers. But I've done that in the past, and I already know what they're going to say. So
Yeah.
yeah, she was super devastated. And then when we found this program at the local college, it was like it was a no brainer. I didn't even ask her. I signed her up for it. I says, hey, we're doing this in the summer. It's the first one she went to was like a 2 week program, and it was just she woke up before the alarm clock. I mean, she was dressed, she was downstairs, had food in her belly, and she was standing by the door. Are we leaving? Are we leaving? Are we leaving? And it's like I couldn't be more proud as a dad, of a boy or a girl to have a kid that's that excited about it. But yeah, that and now she's headed off to college now. She's chosen a biomedical engineering for her bachelor's degree with a minor in quantum computing. I learned that literally yesterday. I could not be more proud. Quantum's not, I think, commercially viable yet, but it's going to be here in a few years. And
Will be.
she's thinking ahead that's an industry that she wants to be in. With the the biomed part is definitely encouraging to me.
Yeah.
I think there's still hope for our species.
Well, I think so. And you look at like Girls Who Code, and that was the really interesting part about that is it was started by this lady, Rashma Shajani, and she did it because she saw that there was this gap that what was happening. Everybody was saying that it was, and I'm going to butcher the story, but basically, everybody's saying that it's that, oh, girls just don't, this or that, and girls just aren't, technically inclined, and it's just more of a, and she's like, that's crap. It's that they're not given a space where they can be encouraged to do it. And she starts Girls Who Can Code, and the statistics on it are just overwhelmingly positive. The number of girls who now go into the field, she is single-handedly by changing the system, by creating an avenue. She has affected tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of lives now, for the better, and moving them in that direction. And so it's stuff like that. I think we need to start thinking more systemically, what is wrong and how do we fix it? And it is never that, oh, girls are this or that. It's that the system isn't set up to provide an equal playing field. And we see that with Girls Who Code. And
Absolutely.
that's one of those things which is really cool. And you see it firsthand with your daughter. Um, you know, my daughter was, was a one of the instructors there. She had a great time doing it. And it's just a phenomenal I guess project, a great group. but those are examples of like getting people to see the world, especially other guys. It's one thing for it to be, I think we tend to put everything on women, like they need to do this and and then how do they create the space? What are we doing to create the, to change the systems at work? And it's hard, right? It's hard to even think that way, which is why I think we need that other 50% of the perspective to help us see the situation. And I think at the other hand, we need to be open to it. To not to like, guys have just kind of grown up, you guys our age, in a totally different world where the expectations, the culture, the everything was different. To then be to We have to be open to seeing the world from that perspective. And I think a lot of guys, while they may consider themselves a good guy, um, they're seeing it from their perspective alone and not that of what women have to go through in this system. And I think the more we talk about these topics and the more guys that have this perspective, the more that will be seen, the more systems will be created, and eventually we will have a much more, balanced playing field here where they have all the opportunities and their competitiveness, their aggression is seen for what it is, a good positive thing, not, oh, they have to play these weird games where so they don't offend some guy at work, or feel threatened, or be called a name because they are just as aggressive as the guy. So I could go on and on, but
It's in the workplace, it's a little different conversation. I have managed to slide into a position where 30% of my staff, the IT technical staff, is female. They're the females that work there, they're very good at their jobs. I'm very impressed. Not that I'm not impressed with the guys; they're doing a great job too. But I think the opportunity needs to be there for them to not only not really succeed but excel.
yeah,
And that's the type of environment that I'm trying to provide. One of the first big changes I made to the team when I came in is to make sure that they understand all the access to the free training resources that are available. Nobody on the team even knew that there was this huge Microsoft training portal that was available for free for all. Just put in your tenant UPN and you get access to everything. And they're like, oh wow. So now part of my overseeing the department is going to be to push and or demand a training schedule. I want to see X number of course hour work done over the course of each quarter, and then I want to evaluate everybody at the end of the year, and that's going to be a portion of your review. Is going to be how much did you learn about and obviously I want them to learn about something that benefits the company, which is pretty much anything that's tenant based or any of the technologies internally. But push that on everybody. And I'm not going to accept less from the girls or the guys. When I set out the policy that this is what we're going to do, this is what I expect. You want to get good marks on your review, and I say it's going to be 4 hours a quarter. I want to see at least 4 hours a quarter. And those that go above and beyond, and I think that they will, because once people start clicking that button and going through the lessons, especially tech people, we can get a little obsessed about stuff sometimes. I'm sure you're well aware of that.
well aware. Yeah.
I've never gone into a room and sat in there and coded for 48 straight. That's never happened.
No, of course not.
Yeah. But in my prior employer, that's what I pushed. Everybody took minimum 1 week of training per year. The budget was obviously a little bit larger there, so we were able to afford to send people off site. So everybody takes a 1 week class someplace in the course of a year, every year. And that's kind of how I ran the department. If budget was a little better, I would insist on that now. But now it's going to be free resources. For 2027, I'm putting in requests for training dollars. If I can push that number up and get everybody offsite to do a week's worth of intense training, focus on something, I think that would be a huge benefit for everybody and a huge benefit for the company.
Absolutely.
I'm kind of mulling over my presentation deck on that. Because I've done this several times at several employers. I want to get staff training, but pushing the females to do it, I think is kind of that little extra for me to see them succeed, to really push them to do better. And they've all got it in them. I've been working with them for a few weeks now. I think I'm a pretty good assessment of their capabilities. what they're currently capable of, and I think I've got a pretty good assessment of what they're ultimately capable of doing. I just don't see any limitations.
Yeah.
You know?
Nope. 100%. And it's about providing the opportunities and the resources, and that's what you're doing. And I commend you, Shawn. This has been an absolute pleasure. I think we could do this all day, but before we go, can you tell everybody where they can find out more about you?
I will give my LinkedIn information off to Matthew and team so they can put it on the bottom of the video.
Yep, we
And
will definitely link it.
yeah, so that'd be that's a good place to find me.
LinkedIn's a good one.
I'm also currently blogging this year. I intend to cover a minimum of 50 cybersecurity and manufacturing topics. So look for those.
Fantastic. Well, Shawn, thanks for coming on. Until next time.
All right, appreciate it. Thank you, Matt.
You're welcome.
Thanks for listening to the Cyber Business Podcast. We'll see you again next time, and be sure to click subscribe to get future episodes.